Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of Conversations with Michael and Jermaine. How are you today, Michael?
I couldn't be better, Jay.
Oh, how so? What makes today such a I couldn't be better kind of day?
You know, I put it this way. I know where my next meal is coming from. I have a bed, a roof over my head, and at this moment, I'm feeling great.
Awesome.
What
It's a
more?
great
What more could I ask for? What more could
right?
I?
I think it's what I was saying to a friend of mine recently that when we kind of take a moment to be in gratitude, you kind of
Mhm.
realize how much joy is available and accessible to you on a daily basis, and the other things they'll get worked out. So yeah, I'm very happy to be back in conversation with you. It was a really great episode last time. I really enjoyed I mean, I felt myself reflecting a lot afterwards. A few people reached out to me who listened to the podcast, and I thank everyone for listening. But I was such a very healing and powerful conversation the last time we spoke.
And the feeling's mutual. You know,
Yeah.
whenever you and I have these conversations, or even when we're not in conversation, as in the podcast, just when you and I talk, I mean, I always leave. My brain is always in overdrive.
Same, same. We had a beautiful comment that I wanted to highlight this week from
Mhm.
Dimples. That thank you, Michael, for jumping out on the screen. She said something that I thought was really dope. She thanked us for the episode. She really enjoyed it. She said, "I cried while listening because it was refreshing to finally have a definition for grief that matches exactly how I'm feeling. Love with no place to go." And I'm gonna pause it there because I think I remember when we were talking and that definition came up. I remember literally also feeling that same experience that Dimples talked about. It was finally a way to put a word to what I was experiencing, and you kind of came up with that, Michael. Like, was that something that you had thought about way before, or that was something that you just kind of held on to for the longest time?
It's interesting. First of all, let me say thanks to Dimples for taking the time to share the conversation with us. Um, the tears that she mentioned,
Mm,
hmm, that when I was searching for the reason, a good reason, as to why it was that I was I was feeling the way I was feeling when I encountered loss, and when I it's in reflection and thinking and reading and doing soul searching that I came to that realization that it's really grief with nowhere else to go. I'm the only one who could carry that, you know? And that was what helped me to stop my tears, to slow them
yeah,
down.
yeah. Love with no place to go. Yeah, it's funny you say that. So, because today I wanted to lean into a conversation more around because I find myself now in a place where a friend of mine said leveling up. That you're Jermaine, if you look like you're in the next level of your life, you're now you've now turned the page, you've now in the next chapter of your life. And I wanted to kind of understand that because I found a lot of my friends, if you're lucky like I am, you have good friends in your life that reflect you. A lot of my friends are in this beautiful place of transition and growth and wanting to step to the next level of themselves. And it's a really interesting feeling to navigate, and also like what is it to grow into a next level of yourself. How do you transition from a former version of yourself, release the things that no longer serve you, to embrace and create the capacity for the things that are coming, and for also the new ways that you are. So I kind of want to kind of ask you a question there, as somebody who's lived a little bit more life experience than I have. Was there a moment for you that you felt that you changed?
Hmm. You know, I mean, a defining moment. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I can't think of a specific moment. I think I gradually evolved over time. I was always searching, looking for something better because I thought where I was in my life, and how it was moving along. I just thought there had to be something better. There had to be a better, more effective way to live. And that's when I started to read a lot of self-help books, I enrolled in a lot of courses, and I read copiously and continue to read a lot about psychology. And the more I read, a good place to start, which for me was to start to find out more about yourself. Okay, because sometimes we 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 say we don't have something, but we're not sure what it is we don't have.
Yeah.
We're looking for something, but we're not sure what it is we're looking for. There is this sense of discomfort, dis-ease, you know,
Yeah.
which can lead to disease. And unless you understand what's going on in your mind. So in my search, I had to start to interrogate my thoughts, you know, to really figure out what it is that I'm looking for. And I came up with the fact that I need to find out more about myself, to know more about who I was, understand more about me. And that's when it started. So there wasn't any one moment to answer the question, Jay.
Yeah.
It was a continuous search and an evolution. And the more I started to delve into trying to find out who I was, that's when the scales started to leave my eyes,
Yeah.
and I was able to now more and more see. And from there, it just got better.
What I like about what you just said, reflect on the first part, you had a search for something better. Like this initial kind of impulse to know that where you are, the space that you're in, whether it be financial or relationship wise, or and sometime in my case, context of how I was born and raised in Spanish and Jamaica, I've there was this search for more. I think that's a part of the first kind of initial idea of to grow and to change, go to the next level. There has to almost be, I don't know if it's an impulse, an intuition, or a need within to want more, to want something better. So that change and that growth of self isn't just an outside thing. It's definitely coming from within. To the same question, I think I experienced something like that when I remember having lived away for a while, lived abroad, and abroad for me was New York and then London, and then somewhere in those living in those multiple cities, and then going back to Jamaica to either do a workshop or something, and I realized how different I was in the context of Jamaica and how much I had changed and how much my patience with certain things had changed. One, my access
Nice.
to being able to the way I showed up in rooms,
Mm.
people expecting me to also sometime when I transitioned from being a dancer into a writer and a composer, wanting me to still stay in. Oh, but you're a dancer. You're this thing. Like, why are you not doing this? And me actually wanting to say no. I've stepped into another version of myself that felt intuitive, that felt honest, and it was coming from that place. Funny, last night I was having a conversation with someone I ran into. I'm always chatting to people, and my thing with that is, of course, reading self-help books, and but also just living life and really meeting and hearing people's stories and really listening. And one of the things that came out in our conversation was the questions that you ask help to determine how you change. So it's not, you always talk about everything comes from a question, which we love. It's really about the way the questions that you're asking about personal change and personal growth. And
Yes.
so the thing that I'm trying to figure out now in this, why is it important to keep evolving and to keep changing?
Well, if you were happy with where you were, then you that wouldn't be a question. Okay. So you use some very interesting words there. You said wanting more, wanting to change. Okay, so let's start with those two. Wanting more of what? Because
I
that is
suppose,
something you have to identify.
yeah, I'm more
Wanting
fulfilling
more of what?
life. I mean, I'm more fulfilling like lived experience, like wanting.
And what does that look like?
Well, in one sense, it looks like a more financial access and success, and more access to be able to change financially where you are. I think it's one of the biggest things. Sometimes we think of growth,
So financial growth would be one thing.
financial growth, which is one of the growth, not the only
Mm.
growth, but
Okay.
financial growth. There's also, for me, what's important is spiritual growth.
Okay.
We talked a little and growth of self in terms of how you experience the world. I was talking to you a little bit earlier this morning about it, where I find I was speaking to a high school friend of mine, and they were saying how some of the best times in their life was high school, and how much they loved it, and it was great, it was the best time of their life. And there was also reflection as I was talking to him about it, like as great as high school experience was, at some point you have to leave it and step
Mhm.
into the next level of yourself. And how do you allow yourself to grow from those wonderful experiences? Still know that those experiences are going to be with you, but you have to grow from them. So you're no longer living an adult in a high school still, if that makes sense.
So what? They were in a sort of high school mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
a lot of my,
And how
I
is
find out
that
with a lot of my generation that we're still like
and
in
how is
high
that
school.
manifesting? How is that showing?
Just like the petty conversations
Okay.
about people, or how we show up in the world, like the mean crew and the popular crew and the underdog crew, or if you had, which a lot of young men suffer from, we don't talk a lot about it, the body dysmorphia of like what you look like in that space, and now you're stepping into working on yourself to prove to the kids that never saw you something. And so it's really about how do we grow into the parts of ourselves that is, I suppose, is leaning into intention and purpose. If you think that you are driven by purpose, to be able to, because I like to think a huge part of my growth and a huge part of what I try to navigate in terms of becoming an adult, because I also wanted to be, when I accepted the fact that I wanted to be a grown man, like I wanted to be a man. I know age wise, I'm like no longer this ingenue. And I actually really wanted to grow up to like be a man that I'm proud of for myself.
You know,
But
Jay, every, there's so many, you're raising so many questions, because that's one of the questions I had to deal with myself. What does it mean to be a man?
yeah,
What does it mean to be a man? How do you define a man? What is a man? You know what I mean? What is the measure of a man? So these are some big questions you're raising there, and
yeah.
I don't know that we have enough time to explore all of those. But look, there are some stages of growth in our life. So we need to surrender as like high school. Yeah, you had a great, if you had a great time at high school, that's good. And, you're not denying that, but you're no longer in high school. You're now in the working world. You're now an adult with responsibilities. So, and not just, for when you were in high school, your parents or whoever your caregivers were, they were responsible for you then. You've now evolved into another stage. And so you're now responsible for yourself. So you have to let go of those things, that that when you were in high school, that served you then is no longer serving you now. So you need to take responsibility as a form as you mature for how you're going to pay for your life. What does that look like? What's your life going to look like? How much is the life you are envisioning? How much is it going to cost? And what are you going to do to pay for it?
I think that's a really great point about responsibility. I think that's one of the first thing about, I mean, I've been being an adult. Um, I do find that that is a baton that needs to be handed over so carefully about how to take responsibility for self. I don't know yet if my generation has mastered it. I don't know if I've mastered it yet. I'm still figuring out how do I take care of this human being. And I'll have friends who are having kids. I'm like, but now you have to take care of this human being and now a whole other life. But
Mhm.
there is something about growth and stepping into the next level of yourself that actually is putting you in the driver's seat for your life. And if something is not working, something is not, I think that's part of growth now that I'm embracing. The thing that you want to achieve, for me, it's my success with my art and my finances and just becoming a better person in the world. I am responsible for doing that.
Mhm.
I am responsible, and that doesn't mean that I need to do it by myself. I can ask for help, I can lean into my community, but I'm responsible for asking for the help. So I think that's the other part of, like, talk about what it is to be a man. And one of the things that I'm learning how to do, which is a really hard thing, because I'm not used to it yet, is asking for help as a part of growth.
Now,
Being able to
why is
ask.
that so difficult for you?
I think it's a cultural thing. I think also, you have to
What is
man
it
up.
about the culture that makes
The
so?
idea of manning up and toughing up is walking the individual path and not needing support.
And you're sure that's the reason?
I can't say I'm sure that's the reason. That's the reason I'm coming
What
up
are
with
you
that.
sure of? What are you sure of?
I'm sure of in that conversation, I'm sure of the fact that there has been unhealthy spaces that I've asked in that have made me shy about asking again.
Shy about asking.
Yeah.
You have been in spaces that has made you shy about asking.
Yeah. Because some of
What has
those,
happened? What was the experience? I mean, like you were turned down. You've been turned down
yeah,
several
some of that was
times.
rejection, and we talked about that in the second episode. Some of that was understanding how to do the ask and clarifying your question. And
Hmm.
some of that was I was just asking for in spaces that weren't able to understand my why or understand what I was doing. And it's very layered in so many ways. But I've come to this really because particularly with my one of the things that's helpful for me right now, let me talk about my art, is I'm getting a lot of support now in terms of being able to build my career and having donors and funders and also just friends who are supporting and showing up in ways that I realized that one of the things I needed to do was to ask for the help, ask for the support.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you
so
see, here's the thing. I think, as you said, we it's something we touched on in the second episode. This whole thing of was it
rejection.
rejection? Okay, I I came to the realization that if I was afraid of rejection, then there's no way I could progress. Okay, because we don't exist on the planet by ourselves. And we all need help at some point. You know what I mean? We all need someone to lean on. Nobody kind of just got there by themselves. Everybody in whatever position they're in now, even if it was somebody who inherited wealth from the parents or generational wealth, it was in the family kind of thing. And they inherited it from somebody and then from somebody and then from somebody. Okay. So, and the majority of people in this world, they were helped by somebody. Somebody helped them to point them the way. Okay. And in that sense, you paid forward. And because I have been doing that in my life, then I don't have any reservations now about asking for help. It's like a simple thing like on the street, I'm not sure where I'm going and I need some direction. I don't have any reservations about stopping someone and asking them for directions.
And I think that,
Now, now the
sorry,
thing
finish your thought.
is, the thing is, okay, I understand that they might say, hey, no, look, I don't have the time. They may not stop. They may just keep going ahead. But my experience has been more persons have been willing to help than have not been. So I go on the basis of the average. You know what I mean? So I'm not comfortable doing that. In the same token, if somebody stops me and asks me for direction, I would be happy to do it. You know what I mean? So I'm not asking for anything that I wouldn't do myself for somebody
Yeah.
else.
So I think to the point is a part of growth, and then we talk about being responsible for self, and knowing that you have to have the responsibility for self. One of the other steps is also asking for support in the space that you want to grow. As you're listening, I want to thank you for listening and being a part of our conversation. So please like, subscribe, and share and comment in our on our podcast. So I have a question for you. We talked a little bit about it earlier. What is for you then to be a man, if that's something that because you said you pondered it too and it's something that you had to navigate, what does that mean for you?
Mm. Uh, it's simply being able to, if know that I have an innate ability to be able to, whatever it is I want in my life, that I'm capable of attaining that. Okay. Now it has nothing to do with gender. You know what I mean? It's just straight knowing that I think of myself as a human being. I think of myself as someone who has the ability to think and reason. And therefore, once I can do that, and I've learned, I work on doing that effectively, then I should be able to provide for myself as a human being. Okay. It just so happens that I identify as male.
Yeah,
It's
and
just that
you're
you're,
navigating in this
yeah,
body. Yeah,
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 you know what I mean? But just being able to effectively take responsibility for your life
Yeah.
and your relationships, and being able to do those things that will allow you to effectively engage with other members of the human race,
Yeah.
you know.
So as
And
somebody
that, to me,
who,
is what it is. So
yeah,
my gender, or how someone identifies, is neither here nor there for me.
it's
You know
about
what I
self
mean?
actualization. Yeah.
Yeah, it's being able to effectively take responsibility for your life, and
Yeah.
relationships.
I do find so. I totally agree with that, and I echo the same sentiment. I think as we're self actualizing, get to the next level of self, there is certain, I don't know if the word is basic, but important things that I know I want to grow in and become more adept at, and actually know that these are growth milestones I need to check off as life is happening. And there are certain things that I'm going to ask you because I'm watching even my mother as she's aging, and friends with their aging, how the body is shifting and changing, and to be able to accept that growth also comes with certain parts of yourself. Talking about grief last week, dying or shifting, and how the body sometimes, I watch friends sometimes the body goes, oh, now I'm navigating a health thing, because growing and aging also comes with sometimes a physical body shifting and desire shifting and ways of thinking shifting. How do we embrace that space? And I don't think there's an answer for it, but how do we embrace that space without becoming stuck in our ways, or not embracing the truth of the shifts of our natural physical space body as we are growing?
You know, I think for me, what I've been able to do is to accept reality.
Hmm.
Reality is a very hard pill to swallow.
Hard.
But the more you learn to taste it, the easier it becomes to work with. You know what I mean? And I find that after a while, think of it like some food that you acquire the taste for. Okay, so I'm acquiring the taste for reality.
I'm trying to get there.
Reality is hard.
Sometimes I add a
I
sweetening.
don't. I try not to lie. I think the greatest lie. I see people get bent out of shape when people say, "Oh, somebody lied to them and they told them a lie, and I can't stand a liar." Well, look, if you really want to see a liar, look in the mirror. Okay.
Yeah, we
The
lie to
point.
ourselves a
The
lot.
point here is this. Okay. The greatest lie that we will ever hear, or are the ones that we tell ourselves. Okay. So if you know that at a certain age you need to surrender certain things because you're just not able to do it as well as you could. When you were a younger dancer, for example, there are things that you could do that, I mean, your body was just there.
I can
As
still do it,
you,
Michael. You don't know me. My body can still do it. I'm joking.
eh?
Go ahead. I can still get my leg up. What?
Look, I know that. I look that that's I support you in that. Okay, I support you in that.
Yeah.
But a lot of other persons, they're just not there.
Yeah.
Life has been good to you in the sense that, I mean, you've been able to maintain your form and your body. But there have been other dancers who have been hurt, who have had injuries, who have developed conditions that they're not able to perform anymore.
Yeah. When I was working with a friend of mine,
And
Jim. Sorry, finish the
yes.
thought.
So it's about being able to accept where you are, you know what I mean, in life. Being able to accept where you are and be honest with that. Because if you can't accept where you are, and then when I say accept, I don't mean you like it necessarily. It just means that you accept it. Because if you don't accept it, then you can't take agency for changing it or for deciding what you're going to do in order to change whatever it is you're trying to change.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, Ron,
You
about
know?
the song that we both love. Everything must change. Everything must change. Nothing stays the same,
Yeah.
and I think it is embracing the fact that change
Yeah.
is constant. That although I joke about my body, but I'm never going to approach the dance, if I do dance for any means, the same way I did at 19 years old, because that wouldn't be smart. That wouldn't be smart for myself, my health, and just also my mental. Because then you're competing with a version of yourself that also is gonna trigger you sometime and sabotage you to actually, I might not have the same physical facility that I did at 19, but the maturity that I now have, the storytelling is so much more layered and rich. And I
To
think that
do other things. Exactly.
do
So
other
you've now leveled up, which is what we decided we're going to be looking at. Okay.
yeah, leveling up.
Leveling up means you have pretty much mastered what you did at 19 and everything else. But as you advance in age, it means now that you're no longer able to do those things because for obvious reasons. All right. And so therefore you're moving up to another level. And another say I always say we move to another level of incompetence. Okay, when we move because
No.
it's new, it's exciting, and if you're open to change and growth, it's great. All right.
But also for me, one of my levels up that I've been experiencing, which I'm very,
Mhm.
very excited about, because a lot of my friends who know me, I speak very openly and candidly about it, is leveling up of myself financially.
Mhm.
Like being able to go, there are certain things that well, I used to spend on at 19, and I shouldn't be spending on those anymore financially. Like, so now I need to level up to how I use my money, how I use, and there's just certain things that, because a part of the growth for me is going, I need to start thinking of when the body really can't do the same things I want to do anymore. Do I want to be working the same way? I now want to be working smarter. And I also want my money to be working for me now versus me working for the money. Um,
Yeah. So you need to work towards a place where you're not working for money, but your money is not working for you.
and that's a part of the leveling up
So
and
yeah,
growing.
you're talking about financial maturity. You know what I
And
mean?
that financial growth and maturity and financial
Right.
leveling up, because there's so
Okay.
many layers to,
Mhm.
leveling up that's important.
Right. So again, it comes back to okay, you now understand that how you were spending before. I mean, then again, one of the things that I learned very late in life was the importance of money.
Same.
I learned that and I'm still learning. And if it's one thing that I try to pass on to my children, is that importance, because that's the one area that I think that I could have been much better at. But I'm not bemoaning that.
No, but I think
I know no.
why do you think? Because I think, and thank you for being so honest with that, because I do think I have a lot of friends who say that, and that spans across age ranges. And there is, I don't know if it's a cultural thing, I don't know, but there is almost this fear of talking about how to level up and become and know how to use your money, but also stay in spaces that are passionate. That because I know as an artist, sometimes one of the things that I make sure I say to my students, and now I'm starting to teach the semester, and I'm literally putting in my curriculum a financial class where we're also talking about money, because oftentimes it's not even taught. Why do you think that sometimes that is something that we don't really talk so freely about in our circles?
Money.
Yeah.
I think. Well, let me use myself as an example. I came out of an age where the money is the root of all evil,
Mm,
and that thing was playing in my subconscious, and it was coming out in my conscious behavior, and it's like I was getting rid of money even before I earned it. You know what I mean?
mm,
I remember I knew nothing about a key word here, budget. I knew nothing about a budget. And what I've discovered is that people with money, people who have money, whether it's money inherited or money that they've learned how to manage, financial literacy, I call it. There's a formula, and there are
yeah,
certain things that you have to do, and you have to know people who usually come out of families where their parents were in business. They understand how to run a business, so they understand the importance of money and how that works. So they have a money. Their money sense is pretty good. Okay, it's the same thing with wealthy people. They know how to hold on to money, to invest money. Wealthy people, they don't go around saying, "Hey, you know how much I paid for this?"
yeah,
They
yeah,
say to you, "Hey, you know how much I saved on this?"
yeah, yeah,
Okay, you see, that's the language of the rich and the poor. Okay, but it all comes out in your mentality and how you were programmed. Because you just can't wait to get rid of this thing before you have it, because it's
yeah.
not supposed to. It's not a good thing to have.
It's a
And I
mentality of poverty. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that argument was originated by some wealthy person to keep other people
To keep
poor.
us poor, right? Yeah. I love this because although time is coming together. I think what was beautiful about even approaching the conversation and hoping, a huge part of our hope with Michael and I is that these conversations help you to start conversations in your lives about this with your friends and your family. And I know Michael and I will be having these continued conversation as we continue to grow and to grow this program as well. But thank you as always, Michael, for at least helping us to and helping me to open up certain parts of our conversation that are not necessarily in constant public dialogue.
Look, and this is a good place to start. You start with yourself. Everything you want to see in life, start with yourself. And we've been doing that. We've had this. We started a conversation many years ago, and it continues. And I just wanted to also thank persons who take the time to share the conversation with us. And my sincere and fervent hope is that it will trigger some other thoughts and ideas that they could use to improve on the quality of their life and bring them happiness in the end. Because after all, what we're striving for, I mean, at least I know I am, is peace of mind.
Yes.
Peace of
And
mind.
so send us your questions and thoughts and comments and continue to listen to Conversations with Michael and Jermaine.
Absolutely. And we'll see them next time, right?
Yep.